Hi, this is Rick Harsch, and this is my master class for February 16th, 2020. Uh, I would like to talk about the Iowa Writers Workshop. I've been wanting to do this for some time because I wanted to talk to you about my experience with the head of the Writers Workshop at the time I went there in 1993 when it was Frank Conroy. And I wanted to come up with something that replaced his advice, and I wanted to think this through in some way that I could made it possible for me to present some kind of alternative rather than simply spew disgust. But I could never bring myself to think about it for long enough, so we're just going to have to go with the spew of disgust. This is what that is. One thing Frank Conroy does, and on the surface this seems like a great thing, when you get to the Iowa Writers Workshop, he has read your material that you use to apply to the workshop. And then the first few weeks of your attendance at the workshop, he meets with every single writer and speaks with you for a while. Most of the time, he speaks because he doesn't listen very well. I am what's called in the writing vernacular a streak writer. Um, I've always been that way. And the biggest challenge I've had since I moved to Slovenia and found that I didn't have the leisure that I thought I was going to have to write full time, I had to learn how to be a streak writer without writing in streaks. And basically, what I've managed is to keep the books streaking through my mind, and so that when I have a chance to sit down and write, I do it. But when I went to before Frank, Frank said, there are no streak writers. And I said, well, I'm a streak writer. He said, no, you're not. Nobody is. The only way to write is to sit in the same place under the same circumstances for at least 3 hours a day, not too much longer than that, and no shorter than that, and write for those 2 to 3 hours, even if nothing comes, whatever. This may be helpful advice to certain people, but when somebody tells you that he's a streak writer, and you simply say, no, you're not, it's not very helpful. But the worst thing about it is he loves to tell the story of Gabriel Garcia Marquez, who streak wrote 100 Years of Solitude. And he loves to tell the story about how Marquez kind of got the idea of writing this novel in the voice that combined, I believe, his grandmother and a child, and went to the upper story of his house, had his meals brought there and whatever, and in some period of time, 2 months or less maybe, wrote 100 Years of Solitude in a streak. So what Frank Conroy is really doing is, when you're beginning your period of study at the Iowa Writers Workshop, he's saying, you aren't good enough, and you never will be. And the thing is, for me, that was something that I thought was just fucking hilarious. But a lot of people are a little more sensitive than I was and less confident. And I believe he probably destroyed the writing careers of more people than he helped. He didn't help me at all, but he didn't hurt me, which was due to my circumstances at the time. I was happy to have the time to write, and I was getting paid to teach a few classes, so I didn't have to do much. Now, the second thing that's the most hilarious thing about Conroy is what he actually teaches when you take his class. In my last semester, I had Conroy, and he teaches what the three basics of acceptable literature. The foundation of literature is 1, meaning, 2, sense. 3, clarity. And in the time that it will take you to understand the difference between meaning and sense, you could have acted on 3 other words that someone else might give you. Like, off the top of my head, I would say freedom, inspiration, originality. And because naturally, there is meaning in what you write. You don't have to think about that. It is already there. Sense, well, what he's telling you is senseless. So the opposite of that would be sense. Clarity, well, that is something that, ranges from the need for the Oxford comma, which is genuine, and I've mentioned that here before, and the need to convey what you want in the way you want to. And the difficulty with clarity as a basic is that in art, you're actually leaving conventional clarity behind by in the very nature of what you're doing. You're leaving conventional clarity behind. So meaning, sense, and clarity, that is the basis of the literature that's being taught. And it's all fucking nonsense. Of course, Frank is gone and dead, and there's a new person at the Iowa Writers Workshop, and none of this may matter, except that it probably does matter because there are so many workshops. And, as I've seen here with these writers who are what is the right word? Insane and arrogant enough to take money to teach their pristine and self-congratulatory thoughts to paying subscribers. Neil Gaiman and Joyce Carol Oates being the two that I most often encounter for 4 seconds. Well, you could skip this ad in 3 days, but I wouldn't skip it at all. Thanks.